Welcome to Tech Blueprint, a window that lets you know the latest technology news in the world. India has long been internationally recognized as a graveyard for foreign investment. You can start a company and make money in the Indian market, but don't even think about taking a penny out of it. If things go wrong, your company might even beg India to send local companies to acquire it. But compared to some Western countries, India's only advantage is its indiscriminate treatment, ruthlessly harvesting companies regardless of their nationality. Other countries, on the other hand, only target Chinese companies. This time, the Netherlands suddenly issued a temporary order, aiming to completely seize the shares of Chinese companies. The revelations, one detail after another, are both infuriating and alarming. On the evening of October 12, WinGTech Technology issued an announcement announcing that its subsidiary, Nexperia, had run into trouble again in the Netherlands. Nexperia's renewed turmoil is both unexpected and understandable. This isn't the first time Nexperia has been in trouble. In November 2022, Nexperia, a subsidiary of WinGTech Technology, announced its acquisition of Noe, a Dutch company. As Noe is headquartered in the Netherlands, the acquisition, completed with the Dutch government's approval, should have gone smoothly. However, the UK took a detour and started with Nexperia. WinGTech Technology announced its acquisition of Nexperia in 2018. The acquisition process was extremely difficult, not only requiring multiple regulatory oversights, but also considering Nexperia's future operations. Nexperia was struggling at the time and saddled with significant debt. Without capital investment, it would have likely collapsed. It wasn't until 2019 that WinGTech Technology acquired over 98% of Nexperia's shares for 26.8 billion yuan, and the subsequent acquisition of Noe followed. Year after year, WinGTech Technology invested significant effort and capital in Nexperia, ultimately revitalizing it. Since then, WinGTech Technology's influence in the international market has increased again. Everything was moving in a positive direction. However, just after acquiring Noe in 2022, the UK suddenly accused the acquisition of Nexperia of posing a national security risk. It demanded that WinGTech Technology divest Chinese capital from the acquisition, essentially forcing WinGTech Technology to divest its stake in Nexperia. The Netherlands then jumped in, citing a 2020 law demanding a reopening of the investigation into the Noe acquisition. But the Dutch law was untenable. An investigation into this acquisition would have to begin with Nexperia, but the Nexperia acquisition was completed before the law was enacted. After several months of simmering, there was no further news. But there was still a sense of uncertainty hanging over their heads. After all, whether the UK or the Netherlands reopened the investigation, the US was behind it. Given their frequent attempts to find excuses to reopen the investigation, the Nexperia acquisition was likely to face further turmoil. As expected, in October of this year, the Netherlands took direct action against Nexperia. What was different was that this time, the Netherlands' actions were truly drastic. Previously, they had only conducted investigations, concealing their underlying ambitions. This time, they froze Nexperia's parent company and all its subsidiaries, with control frozen for 1 year. Faced with this sudden news, Nexperia's legal director approached the Dutch corporate court requesting an investigation. His actions were swift, and according to relevant regulations, there should have been some leeway. But China underestimated the Netherlands' adherence to the rules. They filed a request for an investigation into their own company, but they refused to agree to it. Not only did they not investigate, but they also issued a temporary order, suspending the chairman's duties and intending to transfer control of their shares to a third party. It's not known what the third party is, but given their current actions, it's certainly unlikely to be Chinese. It's worth noting that this news was only announced by Wingitech Technology on October 12. After so much time has passed, and there's still no room for maneuver, one can only imagine how helpless Wingitech Technology's announcement must have been. Honestly, it's not surprising that the Netherlands would resort to this move. In the past, they've repeatedly considered this acquisition, depending on the US's stance. Now that the US is facing a series of countermeasures from China, it's only natural that they'd want to curry favor. What's a little strange, however, is that the Netherlands went too far this time, practically blatantly robbing the company. To put it bluntly, India at least had to find a plausible excuse, and even then, at least give these companies the opportunity to apply for an investigation. And what about the Netherlands? Using the so-called national security as a pretext, without any notice or review, they simply froze control. What will Nexperia have left? They only have so-called profit rights, while the decision-making and controlling stakes have all passed to the Netherlands. Without these two core elements, does this company still belong to Chinese companies? Isn't the Netherlands afraid of offending China by doing this? China's stance on these companies' overseas investments has always been clear. It absolutely does not tolerate hegemonic tactics as long as they operate legally and in compliance with regulations. It didn't tolerate it during the Huawei incident, and it won't tolerate it now with the Nexperia incident. It's a no-brainer that China won't sit idly by in this matter. If nothing unexpected happens, China will soon respond to this incident and introduce corresponding measures. Since the Netherlands is capable of such behavior, it should bear the consequences. However, this is just the beginning. If the Netherlands treats foreign investment this way, it will lose its credibility in the international market. Then they could very well become the next India. Other overseas companies can't guarantee this, but at least Chinese companies are urged to exercise caution in their overseas investments. Western countries have always prided themselves on playing by the rules. But now, it seems a completely different story. Hegemony and instrumentalism are their guiding principles. But doing so will only create a temporary advantage. In the complex supply chains of the future, China still has many cards to play. Just the issue of rare earths alone is a matter of necessity for the United States, Europe, and other countries. I just hope Nexperia can overcome this crisis quickly. What are your thoughts on this?